Okay, so we will get started. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. This is a first for Full Sail. We are so excited to have the Orange County Supervisor of Elections here with us. And without further ado, we will pass it on to him so that he can go over this very important time that we are in right now and how you can get involved. Thank you.
Right. And thank you and good afternoon, and pleasure to speak with you. Uh, Obviously, the countdown is on. We're 46 days away until the November 3rd presidential election. And so in some ways, we're all looking for the 47th day when maybe the commercial's in and the rhetoric might start, or does it continue because we still don't have a clear winner on election night? So, but crazy times here, getting ready for what will be the largest election ever done here in Orange County, and obviously the largest election ever done in Florida. And of course, that has to do with the fact that we're a fast-growing state. And so with that, let me just quickly go through this PowerPoint presentation that is a little bit about the background on the election process. And then I would rather hear from you and try to answer your questions because those are the things that are most important, is to make sure you know the answer to your questions and you're prepared for the voting. So first off, the next slide is shows the requirements in order to be a registered voter. Obviously, in the state of Florida, you must be a United States citizen. You have to be at least 18. We pre-register individuals at the ages of 16 and 17, and you must be in possession of your civil rights. Right now, here in Orange County, we're at 838,000 plus registered voters. We're the 5th largest county in Florida. The state of Florida is rapidly approaching 14 million registered voters. So when it comes to this presidential election, we are the 3rd largest state, and we are the swing state in the process. Everybody knows California is #1 and they're solid blue. Texas is #2 and they're solid red. And then you come to Florida and we're purple because we're a swing state depending on how you, the voters, vote on elections. The last thing there talks about your civil rights. And of course, the civil rights one has gotten a lot of attention lately because of the passage of Amendment 4 back in 2018, which is still being litigated at this point. So we tell people who may have been a felon that it's up to them. If they believe they've met all the requirements, they can register to vote, or they need to seek help elsewhere from legal or from the state clemency board in order to get their civil rights status cleared before they register to vote. The next slide is just an example of the voter registration form, but there is also another way to register to vote, and that's to go to registertovoteflorida.gov. And on that one, you can do it online as long as you have a Florida driver's license or a Florida ID, because the way the form works is we have to have your signature. So that's why the paper form. But if you do it online, then it goes out to the driver's license office and captures your signature off of your driver's license, and that becomes your official signature for the voting record. There's a little note there about if you're interested in becoming a poll worker on election day. Poll workers do get paid, but the good news is right now we're completely full. We've got backups already, and we still have about 400 people who would still like to work, but we don't yet have enough spaces for them. So our efforts have been good, But anybody, if you're interested in being a poll worker in 2022, if you're still around here, poll workers do get paid, and depends on which position. It can be between $175 and $300 for the day. So the next slide just talks about the ways in which you can get registered. You can get that, do it through the mail. Obviously, if you went and got your driver's license, they probably gave you the opportunity to register to vote, and you can do it there. You can do it at this office, the paper applications, or as I mentioned, the online, which is the register-to-vote-florida.gov. But what is unique is the fact that you have to be registered in the state of Florida by the 29th day before the election. So October 5th, coming up here real soon, is the deadline for registering to vote. And that's to be a registered voter in the state of Florida. Now, if you live in the state of Florida and you move from one county to the next, you can still update your record all the way up to and including election day. But we strongly recommend every time you move, keep us on your list to update your address, because first, remember that when you're voting for the person who represents you based on where you live in the county, and that determines who your elected officials are. So you can update your address online at that register-to-vote-florida.gov, or you can call it in to the county elections office, and we can take address changes over the phone. So October 5th is the deadline. And so the other part too is we have lots of people come to Central Florida who work their way through the naturalization ceremony process to get that United States citizenship. And once they do and they walk out of their naturalization ceremony, our staff is there to sign them up to be voters. So again, the first step to the whole process of voting is to be registered and keep your information up to date. All right, the next slide shares with you the political party structure. The nice part about the general election in Florida is it's open to everybody. Party affiliation does matter. So I know later on you're gonna have some trivia questions about voting, but I'll tell you one of my favorite trivia questions to share with audiences, particularly high school students. When you go to vote, everybody wants to know, well, how did the names get decided in what order they will be on the ballot? And so most people think that it's alpha, and it's not done in alpha order. We have a long-standing law in Florida that's been upheld recently by a federal court that the party of the governor is the party that goes first on the ballot. So when you go to the look at the ballot for presidential, it will be Donald Trump #1 and Joe Biden #2, because those are the two major parties, the Republican and Democrat. People will say, but Mr. Cowles, you screwed the ballot up because it's not in alpha order. And so that's not a mistake. That's the law, and we follow the law. And then after that, the minor political parties, you see there are 7 of them in the state of Florida. And again, they have a small membership, but they do have to keep officers and official records with the state. And then there's the thing called no party affiliation. And so in the no party affiliation is where voters say they don't want to be a Democrat, they don't want to be a Republican. So they usually say, make me independent. But if you look on the minor political parties, you'll see that there's an independent party of Florida. And so from that standpoint, you're actually joining a political party. So if you don't want to be a member of any political party, then you take and you register with no party affiliations. But it does have consequences when it comes to what's called primary elections, and we'll speak to that in a minute. So I told you earlier we have over 835,000 registered voters. You might be interested to know that the registration in Orange County breaks down to where the Democratic Party is number one party with over 360,000 registered voters, but the no party affiliation is second with over 255,000 registered voters, and then Republican Party is at 215,000 registered voters. But by far, the no party affiliation is the fastest growing. And when you look at the state of Florida, I'll give you a little political overview. I-10, which runs from Jacksonville to Pensacola, the panhandle of Florida, is predominantly Republican, a very red area. South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, that area is very blue. So if you're thinking about running statewide, you have to win the two Floridas. That means you have to either win North Florida and South Florida, and then the big one, third part, I-4, Tampa to Daytona. When you look at the voter registration along there, we are evenly split between the two major parties. But the key is those no party affiliation voters, and they're the ones who today are the ones tipping the balance for the winners in the election. So they're focusing on that. So all eyes are on Central Florida for the fact that we sit right in the middle of I-4 in this political season. So a little bit about the political parties, a little bit more about the voting by elections. If we'll go to the next slide. This one has to do with, we have this thing called partisan and nonpartisan. Partisan is when a person is running based on their political party affiliation, and so they're running for their party's nomination. Then we have positions that are nonpartisan, and nonpartisan are the positions where a political party doesn't matter. Obviously, the most popular nonpartisan position is judges, whether they be county judges, circuit judges, state or federal judges. They are nonpartisan. We don't pick them based on their party affiliation. But other positions have now been tagged nonpartisan, such as school board members, those who make decisions about all the school operations in each county. Also here in Orange County, the county commissioners, the mayor, Jerry Demings, and the 6 county commissioners, they also are elected nonpartisan. My job as supervisor of elections is an elected position, but unfortunately I'm over on the partisan side, which my job really should be nonpartisan because of the fact that I serve all voters and make sure that voting's available to all voters. But my position, just like the tax collector, property appraiser, clerk of the court, sheriff, are all partisan. Then you get to the state level and the governor, the Florida House, Florida Senate, and then at the federal level, the president, the U.S. senators, and Congress are partisan. So what's important to understand there is that Florida is a closed primary state. And when we talk about closed primary state, that means that you, in a primary election, only Democrats vote on the Democratic candidates, the Republican candidates vote on the Republican candidates, and everybody else is locked out unless it's a nonpartisan race. But what's interesting, though, is there will be an Amendment 3 on this year's ballot, and that's talking about having open primaries in the state of Florida. And that amendment that voters will be voting on does not mean all positions. It's only currently for governor, the members of the Florida cabinet, like the commissioner of agriculture, the chief financial officer, and attorney general, those positions. and state house and state senate. So it does not talk about the federal jobs of U.S. senator or the congresswoman or congressman positions at this time. So it's very much like what California does, where you just list all the candidates that want to be governor and put their party affiliation next to their name, and all voters get to vote on it. And then the top 2 vote getters in the primary go to the general election for the final vote. And so it's called the top 2 in California. And so that's the question that will be asked of voters. And it came from the fact that Florida has well over 30% of the registered voters are in that no party affiliation, and they feel that they're locked out in this closed primary process. So next slide just kind of talks about the layers of government. People forget about the various layers of government that we have. And first off, at the bottom of the list, really from the top down, but really it's more probably from the bottom up, cities and towns. And if we had time, I would ask you to tell me how many cities or towns there are in Orange County. And like most people, they can't name all of them. But in Orange County, we actually have 13 different cities and towns. The two smallest ones are ones that are actually on the Walt Disney World property, Bay Lakes and Lake Buena Vista. And I have never, ever done an election for them because they're so small. They just sit around the table and they choose amongst themselves who's going to be the mayor and who's going to be on their council. But that's city level. And so if you live in a city, you'll want to know about city taxes, city services, and that comes from the elected officials in the city. At the county level, there's an outline of all the different positions that represent you in the county. We have a county mayor elected by everybody, and then we have 6 single-member districts. And those single-member districts is where the county is divided up into equal size, and then you vote for the commissioner based on your address of where you live. Orange County has a school board chair and 7 school board members. Again, the chair is at large. The school board members are in single-member districts. The superintendent of schools for Orange County, Dr. Barbara Jenkins, is appointed by the school board. So we don't have the school board superintendent elected here in Orange County. Then we have the 6 constitutional officers, which I'm one of them, as the supervisor of elections. And those were the ones I mentioned, like sheriff, clerk of the court, property appraiser, tax collector, and our comptroller. We have this thing called Soil and Water Conservation Board District. They're elected by districts. They don't get paid, but they oversee issues related to the environment. So that's Orange County. And then you duplicate that because now you got 67 other counties where the voting happens for those same type of positions. And then at the state level, obviously you have governor, and then you have the House and Senate members. And again, the House and Senate is broken up into districts. And then finally you have the federal level, which again, we all know about the President of the United States, and we vote for that every 4 years. But again, there's a thing going on right now called the United States Census. It's supposed to be taken every 10 years. April Fool's Day was supposed to be the deadline, but due to the pandemic, they extended it. And now the new deadline for submitting your census questionnaire is Halloween. So we make sure that you have yours in, because the census count is what decides how many congressional districts we're going to get based on population. Because of our growth, they're anticipating that we're going to probably get at least one more new congressional district, but that means some state is losing a district because of the population loss in that area. So right now, the state of Florida is divided up into 27 congressional districts. Every state has 2 United States senators. And when you add those 2 numbers together, it gives us the 29 votes that we have in the Electoral College, which is the real way that we elect the President of the United States. And so we have 29, and there's only 2 states ahead of us. Texas and California have more votes than we do. And so all eyes are on us and those 29 electoral votes. The key thing about the election process is everybody knows about voting for president, but what happens at the local level is probably even more important because of the fact that they're the ones making decisions, whether they be city councils or county commission, school board. They're making decisions about the quality of life right here in our community. And so they should get probably more attention than we give to the voting for President of the United States. So keep in mind when you hear that there's an election at the local level, you should be participating in that because they're the ones setting local taxes and that affect you. So now we get to the voting. The next slide, we have 3 ways to vote in the state of Florida. Vote by mail used to be called absentee. Used to have an excuse in order to get a vote by mail ballot. Now we just say, if you want to vote by mail, you can have a ballot to mark. And so you do need to request it. We're not one of the states where they're just sending the ballots to every registered voter. So you have to request it. And you can request it online on our website, or you can call in your request. The requests are good for 2 years. And then, of course, if you go off and move, you got to update it because you're going to vote your ballot on that. But we have mechanisms for kids who go off to college who still call Central Florida their home, or if they're in the military, they can still get a ballot. The key thing about your ballot is once you get it, mark it and send it back to us sooner rather than later. The United States Postal Service says it takes 7 days for first-class mail to move around. And so if you're going to put your ballot in the mail, do it at least a week before the election. But also, we're going to talk next about our early voting. And at every early voting site, we're going to have drop boxes where you can just drive up, drop off your ballot, and then drive off. No parking necessary. And also that way you don't have to go through the mail. And if you wait till closer to election day, you can put that ballot in one of our 20 early voting sites drop site. Otherwise, all ballots must be here at the elections office by 7 p.m. election night. A postmark does not count. And the one thing that I just do not understand is how people get their vote by mail ballot. They open it, they vote their ballot, they put it back in the certificate envelope, and then there's that big red box with a big X that says you must sign it. And we rejected in August over 500 ballots because the voter did not sign in that box. And we gave them a cure affidavit to fix it, and they still didn't respond to the cure affidavit. And a little over 300 voters, their ballots were rejected because their signature changed. And so you got to make sure that your signature matches the signature of record here. So if you've gotten really sloppy with your signature, that fancy professional signature, check your driver's license and see if that driver's license signature is more like what you signed a document for voting or IRS and all. So make sure your signature match, or get the cure affidavit when we send it to you and fix it. So vote by mail clearly during the pandemic has become the number one way to vote. The second way is early voting. The next slide. Early voting is where we open up early voting sites for 14 days, starting on the 15th day, because there is no early voting on the day before the election. So for 14 straight days, 12 hours a day. The early voting will be open from August 19th through November the 1st, 20 sites. And you may have been keeping up with the NBA players and the issue about voting that has become their number one message is encouraging everybody to vote. And so they reached out to us, as they have across the country, and the Amway Center in downtown Orlando, the home of the Orlando Magic, will be our 20th early voting site for this election. And all of the early voting sites will have a drop-off location for dropping off those vote-by-mail ballots as well. And there's pictures there of the sample ballots that we mail out to the voters prior to the election, as long as you don't already have a vote by mail. That tells you what your ballot will look like, so you can pre-study it, pre-mark it, and bring it with you to early voting or to your polling place. It also has a map to your polling place, and it has a listing of all 20 early voting sites. And finally, there's election day itself. And on election day, you can actually go to your actual polling place that's designated based on your residency, and you have to go to the one assigned to you. So from that standpoint, you have to make sure you get to the right place, and sometimes that's not convenient to your schedule, and that's why people prefer early voting or voting by mail. So those are the three ways to vote. Early vote by mail is number one. Early voting used to be number one, but in this pandemic, it slipped to number two. And finally, going to the polls, and that you have to go between 7 and 7. So final slide is just a reminder, November 3rd is the election, and October 5th is the deadline to register. So with that, we have, let's see, first off, we have a little video that we'd like to show. And this is about the vote by mail process. We actually ran a contest with high school students. A young lady from Winter Park High School, Ella Grace Rodriguez, who will be headed to the University of Southern California whenever they allow them to come on campus. And she will be studying film and photography and all. And she put this together, and this was our winning video about how to vote by mail.
Going to the polls may feel more daunting than ever before. That's why in Orange County, we offer a vote by mail option anyone can request for. There are 3 main steps for vote by mail. Step 1, request. There are lots of ways to request a voting ballot: online, by mail, fax, phone, and email, but all will ask for the same information: your name, date of birth, residential address, temporary address if you need your ballot mailed there instead, signature, and specification of which election you want to vote through mail. Step 2, vote. When you receive your ballot in the mail, fill the bubbles in completely with a dark pen. You must sign the return envelope, otherwise known as your voter's certificate. This is included because we want to make sure your ballot is counted and your voice is heard. And the last step, send your ballot. You should send your ballot no later than 5 days before Election Day to make sure that it's received on time and counted. And don't worry about stamps. If you're worried about your vote coming in, you can track your ballot at orangecountyvotes.com or call the Orange County Elections Office at 407-836-VOTE. If you would prefer dropping off your ballot, you can leave it at any early voting location or at the Orange County Elections Office. But remember, the Elections Office must receive your ballot by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Postmarks on the same day do not count. In Orange County, vote by mail is a safe and easy way to participate in your local and national government. To get started, visit www.orangecountyvotes.com or call 407-836-VOTE.
So that was our winner for that. And then last thing before I start taking your questions and answering them, how about we have a couple pictures from our press conference for kicking off the early voting at Amway Center. And also promoting our early voting one. And the tall guy there is Mo Bamba, the center for the Orlando Magic. And the Orlando Magic, you may have seen them when they stepped off the bus at the bubble at Walt Disney World to restart the NBA season. And they all stepped off with their t-shirts on that they created. And it's get off the bench, get in the game, vote. And that's a very appropriate slogan. And we support the Magic and their players on this effort to get out as many voters as we can.
Good.
So I think, Jessica, we're to the point, if they've got questions for me about the voting process, I'd love to be able to try to answer their questions.
All right, let's see. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have a question.
Hi, I'm Seth. I just printed my registration, but I filled it out in I filled it out last month, but I only printed it now. Do I need to refill it? Because the date there is the 4th of August.
No, as long as we receive it by October 5th, you're good.
All right.
Thank you for registering.
I haven't registered yet, but thanks.
Any other questions? You can go ahead and unmute yourselves. I do have a question. What if we initially want to vote by mail when we request our ballot, and then early voting comes along and we decide, okay, I want to early vote, I don't want to vote by mail?
That's a good question. And the answer is real simple. Until that vote by mail ballot is returned to this office and accepted, you have not voted. So you can go to an early voting site or election day, and when you show up, it will bring up on your record that you were issued a vote by mail ballot. And if you have it with you, they'll ask you to surrender it and they'll cancel it. If you don't have it, you'll sign an affidavit saying that you have not yet voted it, and then you can vote right there at an early voting site or at your polling place on election day. The key thing is you can only vote once in an election, despite some rhetoric you may have heard saying vote by mail and then go to your polling place and test it. And the software controls that. All early voting sites are networked together, and all of the polling places are networked together to this office, so we can keep the information fresh and up to date so that nobody can vote more than once.
Very good. Any other questions? Or
Yep, I have one more. How do I confirm that I'm registered once I send the mail?
When you actually send in your form, and once we process it, you will get a voter information card in the mail that confirms that you're registered. It will show you the name and address of your polling location, and it also will show you what districts you live in so that you can use that to figure out who you get to vote for.
Got it. Thank you.
I think I saw a question in the chat room come up and I didn't catch it.
Okay, I'll read it. It says, for someone concerned about voting in person during COVID, what steps are the poll locations taking? So
Good
this
question.
person wants to go in person, but they're concerned about COVID.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a very popular question too. We're going to have social distancing outside the polling place, where we're going to mark off with chalk the 6-foot intervals, so they stand there. If the facility has a capacity requirement, then we will control how many voters go inside at a time. When you go inside to check in at early voting or at the polling place on election day, there will be a plexiglass shield at the check-in stations between the poll worker and the voter. Normally, when you go in, most people hand off their identification. Florida law requires everybody to show photo and signature ID. And usually the most popular photo and signature ID is your driver's license, but you do not have to have a driver's license. Florida has a long list of photos that you can show, and then you just show something with your signature on it. And so in that case, instead of handing it to the
I think it froze off a little. Froze up a little bit, yes? Okay. Give him a second to come back. Okay, he's coming back in on another device. He's reconnecting. As he's reconnecting, I'll just share October 5th is my birthday. So I'm going to push. Thank you. I'm pushing everyone to register to vote as my birthday gift. That's what I'm going to use, you know, to get the effort out.
That's a wonderful gift. So, but back to the, and I'm sorry, for whatever reason, the bandwidth or something around here tends to knock me off always right in the middle of my presentations on that, and I'm sorry. But the protections, we also have Kleenex at all the polling places. So if you don't want to physically touch the stylus, you can use the Kleenex to do that. You can wear gloves. Everybody's required to wear a mask because that's the executive order in Orange County to wear masks. We'll also have individual take-home secrecy sleeves for the ballots so that we're not recycling those as we have in the past. There'll be the Kleenex to hold the pen, but if you use one of ours, we're encouraging everybody to bring their own pen and pencil or to mark their ballot, blue or black ink on pen. And then when you put your ballot in the machine, you'll pull off your own vote I did sticker instead of us handing it to you. And so it will be hopefully a very safe environment. I will say that the voters in August were very pleased with the precautions we made. And of course, voters can bring their own protections, gloves, masks with them to vote. So we're doing everything we can to make sure the voter feels safe. And if you don't feel safe yet going out and being in an environment like that, then you should probably vote by mail. And that gives you the option still to participate.
Okay, we have a question in the chat box about voting in person. How long will it take for people to vote or cast a ballot if they were to go in person?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I would say this, forgive me if I call you out on it. Vote early rather than late when it comes to early voting. Early voting starts on October 19th, and usually the first week is just pretty smooth going. And then you get to that second week and we get closer to November 3rd and the procrastinators unite. And they all suddenly realize it's Friday afternoon, I should early vote because I'm going out of town for the weekend or family function or whatever. Or suddenly they hear the message in church on Sunday and early voting's ending tonight at 8 o'clock. And suddenly we're going to be there till midnight with the long lines. Florida law does say if you're in line at the time of the closing, you still get to vote. So with early voting, if you're in line by 8 o'clock. And the same is kind of true on the polling place on election day. Just remember how people on a Tuesday and why we continue to vote on Tuesday when it's not the most convenient day. It needs to be looked into. But just remember how voters vote. They vote on their way to work. and then they vote on their way at home at the end of the night. So if you can go mid-morning, mid-afternoon and vote, you're probably going to avoid the line. And also by the sheer numbers, early voting, there's 20 sites around the county. And then on election day, there are 248 or 247 locations around the county. So it spreads it out much more. So the old joke was, go to early vote because the lines will be shorter, but because of the way our community has embraced early voting, particularly since we don't work a traditional work week here, we're a service industry community, more people early vote. So actually going to your polling place is probably quicker to get in and vote on election day. But just don't wait till the end. Don't be one of those procrastinators at the last minute.
All right, do we have any other questions? It looks like you've covered everything.
Okay, well, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, and if you don't mind excusing me, I'm going to go ahead and step off and get back to answering other people's emails and planning for the big day on November the 3rd. So
Thank you.
just make sure you get out and vote.
Yes,
No
and
matter how
get
you
lots
do
of
it.
rest.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Okay, so now we'll go into our trivia game. And hopefully you all can stick around, especially those who are getting GPS. We can definitely work on getting some prizes for you for doing this trivia. So I'll hand it over to our student body president, Danae. I know she's gonna have to share her screen. As she's sharing her screen, let's get our phones for Kahoot. If you have the Kahoot app, pull up the Kahoot app, or you go to the website. I think it's kahoot.it.
My mic is off. Yes.
Okay. So I'm getting this all ready here.
Oh, wow. That is loud. So can everybody see the screen? See the Kahoot. Let me just move this. Okay. Ah,
I know you have a few things up there.
okay. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So you can head to www.kahoot.it or the app and just enter the PIN and you're all set. They're a mix of general US history questions and a few voting questions thrown in there. So should be fun. Let's get started. Next question. Which state is the Liberty Bell located? Pennsylvania. I also got the question wrong when I was looking it up, so don't feel bad. Next question. August 2nd, 1776. How many counties does Florida have? Last question. And the winner is for third place, Daring Jaguar. Second place, I don't know how to spell the second half of the word. Sturdy Bobcat is our winner. And thank you guys so much for participating. So if you
All right, so I put in our email address, sca@fullsail.com. Who were the winners? Because you didn't have your names.
Yeah, so the first in third place we have Daring Jaguar.
Okay.
Space New in second place and Sturdy Bobcat in first.
Email me, sca@fullsail.com, so that we can follow up with you with your prize. You may need your mailing address. I have one person that inboxed me, so I'll just send them the email address. But yeah, sca@fullsail.com. Jen West and I will follow up with prizes for first, second, and third. Hopefully it's the 3 students. If not, we might just lean towards the 3 students being winners. All right, so 3 students in here, make sure that you email us so that we can get your mailing address. Any questions or anything? We're pretty much wrapping up unless there are any questions or comments. All right, looks like there are no questions. Thank you all so much for taking the time to do this. I found this to be very informative and hopefully you did too. All right, bye. I'll end the meeting.